Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to this afternoon's episode of School Business Tech. And today we're going to be talking to Nick Finnemore about getting the most out of your MIS provider. As you know, one of the core systems is undoubtedly your MIS system in a school. And the functionality of these platforms is very comprehensive and vast. Setup and training is crucial to get you underway with your MIS platforms, whether you're with your current one or whether you're moving. But after this stage, how do you basically ensure you get the most out of these platforms, and how do you continue progress so that you're benefiting your school? In this episode, I'll be talking to Nick about the ongoing relationship between school business professionals and MIS providers and how it should look so that they're both developing the platforms to progress both organizations. Nick's actually got a background, if you don't know, already in the EdTech market, and he's been a part of it for 20 years, mostly heading up product management for the team at Capitus for many years, focused on the management information system, as we know as sims.net, for schools further and higher education. It's here where Nick actually felt that the MIS should be moved more in a direction from just recording information and data onto it for government census, and to focus greater on giving schools insights that they can provide teachers, leaders, and ultimately the government with a better kind of view of actually how schools are performing. Around 3 years ago, Nick, with his partner Sarah, set up Finnemore Consulting to help mentor ambitious EdTech leaders and help them achieve growth and future-proof their business plans. I'm really happy to have Nick here today because he can really give us a better understanding and an insight into the value proposition of an MIS provider, but also the collaborative working relationship between them and school business professionals to make sure that they can move technology forward and progress both organizations. Good afternoon, Nick. How are you doing?
Yeah, hi, Ryan, and thank you for having me as well. I'm willing to give my view on things sometimes.
It's great. I mean, it is really great to have you here. And I think, you know, we chatted offline, and it's, you know, and straight away when we were having a chat the other week with yourself and myself and Sarah, you know, I think the conversation was great. The dynamics were great. And yeah, I could just see totally where you were thinking, and we were totally aligned. So it's great to have you on board for today's session and really be talking about you know, like the subject that we're talking about today. So if I could and get started straight away for today's audience, can you tell me, do schools really understand the value of their MIS?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think my personal view is I think it's twofold. I think, yes, they do, because ultimately they have to get census done. And ultimately, you know, they have to feed that data into a platform, and you wouldn't be able to get census done without having an MIS. So that, from a very simplistic point of view, then yeah, I do. I think people understand the value of what they got from MIS, because it's basically, you know, the funding that eventually that gets received by the school. As far as do they understand the full extent of what an MIS can do, then I think that's probably, I'd probably have to answer that with a no, I think, in some cases. And I think it's for multiple reasons. You know, I think traditionally these MISs have been big, you know, lots of different functionality in them, like a Sims or like some of the other sort of MISs like Bromcom and so on. And so for a primary school, I think sometimes it can be then, you know, it's a bit like a sledgehammer to crack a nut. And the example I always give is, you know, you might have a behavior system in this MIS, but to be honest with you, you know, what most primary schools are doing, you know, because they want to make it more visual when it comes to behavior and achievement, especially, then they normally have like a snake up the wall, or they do it in much more practical terms.
yeah, totally. Seen a few of those. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think it's so to understand, you know, do they get the most out of the MIS? Then it's because you wouldn't want to duplicate that effort. You don't, as a primary school teacher, I don't want to duplicate that effort unless you knew there was some additional value in doing so to you as a teacher, or to you. You know, it's like anything. You only really want to, you know, you're only really going to get involved and do something if there's some form of benefit to you, normally, in most cases. And I think, you know, with the MIS systems, I don't think, I think they've created all this functionality, and this is probably an example why ScholarPack has done so well, I think, in the primary sector, because ScholarPack have actually focused on primary schools and basically met their needs regarding their functionality and how light the system needs to be. But you could also move on from that and say, well, actually, as an MIS supplier, data and insight is actually everything we want. And actually, the more data you have in the system, including behavior information and other information, then the greater levels of insight you can provide. So it's a bit of a sort of twofold problem. The MIS suppliers need to highlight and show primary schools especially about the sort of value they can get from the data. But at the same time, from a primary school perspective, I'm not going to waste my efforts on duplicating effort, if I can't understand, where that value is. Secondary schools is completely different. Go on, sorry,
Right.
Ryan. You were going to say.
Well, because a lot of the local authorities have these kind of support units. How crucial are they to actually ensuring that schools get the most out of their MIS?
Oh, absolutely, they're fundamental. Because lots of, in fact, I think people undervalued what the support units did for a very, very long time. The Sims sort of business understood it because they were very close in working with these support units. But local support to schools is quite fundamental, especially again going back to primary schools, because they sort of subsidise that sort of technical expertise for starters and sort of help them through that. But also at the same time, they also help with training and helping sort of the usage of the systems. Now, that's going to change slightly, I think.
Yeah, and because we're starting to see groups like Juniper come in, right? So they took on Pupil Assets. It's now going to be Horizons. Do you think that these groups are almost an alternative version to the local support groups?
No, I don't think there will be an alternative. So, they will provide, and actually, there will be definitely an element of consolidation of systems, but actually the usage of, the support units out there, and I mean commercial ones as much as the local ones, are still going to be quite fundamental, because they will, I think the systems are going to become a bit more intuitive. So they are going to have to adapt, and they're going to have to change the way they work themselves, I think, the support units. So they're going to have to level up a little bit and start sort of talking more strategically to these schools and helping them sort of create their technical strategy. Because fundamentally, head teachers are there to teach children, and they need support sometimes with the sort of more technical strategy and how these technical solutions can then support the school in providing better learning, I guess. So I think they're going to have to level up and get to that point where they're more strategic. They're delivering additional value, maybe offer wider solutions as well. So not just MIS, but I don't think the Junipers or the RSs are going to, try and take over that local support for two reasons. One, they can't, it's really hard for them to be local because they normally centralize things to manage costs. And the second thing is, can they really support, there's 22,000 schools out there, can they really support 22,000 schools, especially small primary schools? Local support teams can do that. And within a budget which is affordable, they wouldn't be able to do such a thing.
Right. What areas of MIS platforms do you think are really underutilized? I know you talked a little bit about behavior management and actually the reduction of administration or replication of system functionality. But what areas do you specifically think are underutilized in MIS platforms?
So this is probably going to not surprise a number of MIS owners and people out there, because I think I talk about it almost on a constant basis. So absolutely, do I think sometimes the functionality is underutilized? Yeah, absolutely. I think SEN in an MIS, we did some analysis when I was at Capita to understand what the usage was like, and you're talking about almost 10% of schools only use the SEN area of an MIS. Apart from what was required for census again. So there's lots of areas of functionality, but I think fundamentally that one of the reasons behind that is because the data area is underutilized. There's lots of talk about insights, and that's great, and about reports which schools want or need, which is absolutely fantastic as well. And some people are doing some great work in that space. Bromcom's done some great work in that space. You've got David Potts as a consultant So there are loads of people who are creating some strong reports for schools about what they want or what they know. Now, my view is we need to make a shift now and basically start utilizing that data to get to the point of the things that people don't know. So, there's if you look at what machine learning does, it creates loads of trends. And the amount of data that you have in your MIS, and also if you include your partners, is extraordinary amount of data. People would, other industries would love to have that sort of level of data. But the thing is underutilized. People aren't, as an MIS, most MISs or any other system out there that does reporting, you've got to start delivering on things that schools don't know. As an example, my view is, if you had a pool of data which covered across geographically, like maybe a SIMS did, if it was a cloud-based, you could easily get to the point where you go, actually, these children over in this city have the same demographic as these children in this other city in the same similar sort of type of school. And actually, here's some interventions that worked over here, because actually, if you look at the trend, this child is going to be have the same sort of problems or difficulties that this child over here has got. Then you get to the point where you go, well, actually, here's some interventions that could work. So you're actually informing and supporting teachers better because you're giving them greater levels of insight, but you're identifying things that they wouldn't necessarily expect, which is where I think data needs to get to, because it's happening in every other industry. FinTech, a lot, they're all using data to try and understand more about you as an individual, but also where you might, potentially what you might buy, what you might, what you're going to do in your life. They're basically profiling you. And I'm not saying you can profile individual children, but you can definitely use the aggregated data to start to give that sort of level of insight. One of the things, sorry, right.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but yeah, one of the things I was going to say is, if I'm a school business professional and I'm listening to you now and I'm thinking, Nick's absolutely right. What do I do about that? Like, how do I change the current kind of status quo in my school, my trust? How does that change?
I think what you have to do is push your suppliers. So the thing is, and vice versa, the suppliers need to push education as well. It's a little bit like people always, when I talk about these things, and, obviously I'm talking at a much higher level. I'm not one of the, not part of the MIS as it currently stands. But I believe that you should always look for the art of the possible first. Try and understand what you could achieve. What could you do with all this data? And then work backwards. You can then work out, I know you had Tony Shepherd on quite recently. You have to work out about the GDPR, considerations, and those sort of things are really, really important. But you work backwards from the art of the possible backwards, and then try and work out what that sort of solution is. So what I would suggest to all schools out there and all MATs and all educationalists, start from the point of what could be the art of the possible, and then go to your suppliers and say, look, this is where we need to get to. This is really important. All these other industries are doing this. Why aren't we? Why aren't you supporting me doing this? And then you will find the suppliers will automatically understand that they then have a differentiator. They're slowly moving towards this phase, but if you push them harder, they will run, because it gives them a differentiation across the other challenger MISs or any of the other MISs. So it's in the benefit of both parties. So use them as a partner.
And I think I couldn't agree more. I think, also being an edtech company owner, it really helps when when you get customers who are very challenging and push, they're committed to the product, that what they're trying to do is they're trying to better you as an organization and your product, and they are prepared to put the time. I know it's difficult because, like school business professionals, schools are stretched time poor anyway. But I think for those that have a genuine interest in this and they want to see the industry, the sector kind of evolve and see how technology plays a key part in that, I know, like I said, being a company, an edtech company owner, that is incredibly invaluable, and will reward people the customers who do that by giving them better levels of service, actually access to to product manager and senior support time, and they kind of get these evangelists who are challenging us as an organization, actually do get access to what is my premium staff. And I'm sure the MIS providers are very similar to that. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely spot on what you're saying, Ryan. Ultimately, there's nothing more fundamental actually I think to a company than getting as close as you can to the customer base. The closer you can get to, and I know you can tell from what you're saying as well. It's a premium to you. It's a premium to get so close to your customer base, because they're the people who have the need. They are the best people who understand what their needs are. Without them, you don't understand their needs. So fundamentally, you don't have a business. And then the other side of it is you understand the tech. You firmly understand what technology can do and what it can achieve. So you have to bring both together, and they have to be as close as you possibly can. And then you get to the point where you understand what is the latest technology and how it can best, provide for those needs and basically create solutions. Yeah, absolutely.
A final question, which I always ask everyone because I think it's always so insightful, the different responses. But can you kind of give me your forecast, if you like, your predictions for school business technology over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think the consolidation is going to continue to happen. You can see all these large sort of private equity and venture capitalist sort of type businesses coming in, and there's some fundamental big reasons behind that. One is it's quite a stable market, really. The year-on-year growth of the education market is about 3%. It's no government in their right mind would take money away, from education. It may in real terms feel like it's less, but the fact is it's not going to go away. They're not going to suddenly sort of go, right, let's strip the budgets out of the DFE, as it were. So I think it's a really safe market to play in from those sort of private equity funds. But what they have to do is consolidate, management information, sort of, HR, all the sort of office areas. First of all, I think they're going to consolidate those sort of types of solutions. Then I think they will also go on to the learning platforms as well and create one single proposition. So there will be that true one-stop shop for a school where they become, procurement partners for the maths, or they become it for individual schools as well. And I think ultimately that will happen with the same with the service, the support services. I think again, you can see with the SBS and Strictly sort of merging together as businesses. I can see that happening more with the support teams as well, because fundamentally, there is an element of, if you're going to provide greater levels of service, you need the right number of the right number of people within your team and your business. And some of those local support teams are still funded by local authorities who are shrinking, and so they don't have that scale really to then continue in the long term. So I can definitely see there be a consolidation of software, consolidation of support services in the long term. And I think what that will also provide is, with these big companies coming in, they also know that you have to have a differentiator. If you don't have differentiation, you then turn into a commodity. And if you turn into a commodity, you only fight on price. So they will be fighting. They'll be trying to look within these businesses, how are you going to create that differentiation? And I do think data is absolutely, pivotal to that. Very good.
Very good. Nick Finnemore, thank you so much for your time today, sir. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation as well. Really insightful. Thank you very much for all our guests today who've joined us live. This recording will be available, obviously. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and don't forget to check out Nick on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well. Nick, have a wonderful day. Really appreciate it.
You too.
Take care. Bye now.
Thank you, Ryan.